So you returned at the 1996 Survivor Series and you beat Steve Austin. Here's how it went on TV. I'm curious as to what the original plan was. They do the 97. They do the 97. Brett's on the Guinness, lads. He's on the Guinness. So Royal Rumble 97, Shawn beats Sid for the belt. You win the Rumble, but then Austin throws you out, so he technically wins the Rumble. Then there's no real Rumble winner, so it goes to the final four, which is you, Vader, Undertaker, and Austin. 4 days before that, Shawn relinquishes the belt because he lost his smile. So the winner of the match is going to be the champion. You win the final four and become the champion. The next night, you lose the belt to Psycho Sid. Then it's decided that Sid will defend the belt at WrestleMania against The Undertaker, and you're going to have an I Quit match with Steve Austin. Have I remembered that correctly? What was actually supposed to happen? Like, what was the real plan? Because that's a lot of stuff. Not that I'm trying to insinuate that Shawn Michaels losing his smile was not legitimate. However,
well, in a lot of situations, like when Kevin Nash lost the title, like I remember Vince called me and said, Kevin's not drawing. We're going to have to take the belt off him. And I said, I got an idea how to do it. And I told him that whole idea about me getting knocked through the table at the Survivor Series and winning the belt. And it's funny because I talked to Vince a few days after that conversation. Vince said, I'll think about it. And then he called me up because I got an idea for Survivor Series. And I'm like, okay. And he tells me my whole idea back. So I think Vince sometimes maybe having some drinks or something. I just remember going, I'm not going to argue with him. I'm going to let it be his idea. So I won the title from Kevin Nash. But with Shawn, when Shawn was champion, the ratings started going down, and suddenly WCW was beating WWF for the first time ever in the ratings. So there was a bit of more of a panic in Vince. And what had really happened at the Iron Man match was I had left then the night. I said, I'll probably come back. When I come back, I'm going to work with Shawn for the title again. So I was just taking 6 months off to do some acting stuff that I had set up. And so they didn't care about me. Vince cut me free. Like when I went home after WrestleMania 12, that was it. I just went home. My contract expired about a month after. And I remember Vince had all the wrestlers in the dressing room all had to sign new contracts where they owned they owned your soul even more than they did before. And Owen called me and says, they want me to sign this new contract. I goes, I don't know what to do. And I was giving him advice and stuff. But I remember thinking to myself, my contract just expired. They don't even know it. Like, I'm actually free to go. Like, they don't own me anymore, which is really rare because I only had a window of where I could actually negotiate with some other wrestling company if I wanted to. It was about 30 days of a window to do that in. But as soon as I lost the belt to Shawn and went home, my contract expired about, I don't know, a week later or something like that. And they never even noticed it. And they didn't even care. Like they had their new star. And then they started to worry when Shawn didn't draw. And then they realized, like, oh, his contract's expired now. He's free. So they immediately called me and sent me another contract and started trying to smooth me over. And I'm like, I'm free. I can do whatever I want. And I remember it was kind of a nice feeling. But I had no intentions of going to WCW yet. In fact, I never really wanted to go there. But I always thought I got leverage, which is such an important thing to have. I can actually leverage the two of them and actually, make a really good deal for myself because I'm for the one time in my career, they're the ones that always have the leverage over me, but I got leverage on them this time. And so they called me up and Vince right away trying to smooth talk me into coming down and sign a contract. And I was like, I don't really want to sign any contracts right now. I want to just pursue acting and movies and I'll let you know when I want to come back. And so they were like worried about it. And somehow through that, my agent, or my Hollywood agent, knew Eric Bischoff, and he tried to set up a meeting with me and Eric Bischoff, and he did it by surprise. I didn't even know. I flew in to see him, and he goes, "I got Eric Bischoff upstairs. He just wants to talk to you." And I was like, "I don't want to go to WCW, but I'll, I finally talked me just hearing him out." So we get in a room with Eric Bischoff, and Bischoff says to me, "Tell me how much you want. Name a number, and tell us what your number is, because we can bring you to WCW." And I said, "Well, I want the exact same pay as Hulk Hogan plus 1 penny." And he said, like, he almost fell off his chair. He said, "We can't pay you that." And I said, "Okay, well, we're done. I'm going. Thanks for the meeting. Nice talking to you." And I remember I walked out. I tried to leave, and he's like, "Come on." He goes, "Give me something. Tell me how much give me a number I can take back to Ted Turner, anything." And anyway, so finally it was like, I remember like throwing out I think I threw out $3 million. And he goes, like, same thing, he almost fainted. And I said, "Well, I left and went home." Anyway, long story short, he called me the next day, and they basically offered me the $3 million. They offered me 2.8 plus royalties. And actually, they offered me 2.5 plus royalties, which is about $500,000. So it was a pretty good deal. And then I had to think about it, because I wasn't making that much money with Vince in that sense. And Vince had his new champion and all that. It's like, it was a pretty good time for me to think about leaving. And before I even knew it, I already got a call from Vince saying, "I heard you've already signed. You appreciate it if you give me a call. I've heard you already signed with WCW." And I called him back. I said, "I would never sign. I would never do something like that without talking to you first." I said, "But they did offer me $3 million, and I have to think about it, because it's a lot of money. And, I'm in this business for my family and my kids, not for any other reason. And for my future, it might make more sense to take that offer." I said, "But I'll think about it." So they had me fly down to, Vince actually flew up to Connecticut. No, I'm sorry, he flew up from Connecticut to try to negotiate with me. And we still never really nailed anything down. They flew me all the way down to Connecticut, which is kind of an interesting time. I flew down in about July of that year, and and they flew me up, and I went up to the Titan Towers, the big office in Connecticut there in Stamford. And I met with Jim Ross, Vince, I can't remember who else was there, but all the top people that Vince has got. And they said basically, what do you want to do? Like, you can do anything you want. How do you want to come back? How are you? Like, they were going to make everything for me. And I came up with this idea about wrestling Shawn. I said, because the whole thing about WrestleMania 12 was that I refused to shake Shawn's hand at the end of the match on purpose. And Shawn knew that, and I knew that. Wasn't an intentional snub, like to piss him off or anything. I just told him, I said, "We're going to come back." I said, "I'm going to go home and act like I'm really mad about the decision that Gorilla Monsoon suddenly made overtime for a match that was a 60-minute match." I said, "It gives me a great out, and I have a great reason to be pissed off." And so the whole handshake thing where I didn't shake his hand, it was huge. I mean, all the wrestlers in the dressing room thought it was real. Like, they all thought I was so mad at Shawn that I wouldn't shake his hand. And I remember Owen called me the next day. He goes, "Everyone thinks that, you wouldn't shake his hand and all that stuff." And I go, "Good, leave it that way. Let him think that there's a lot of bad blood between me and Shawn, because there isn't." And so I thought about it. I said, the way I thought to come back and wrestle Shawn was that we should come back at WrestleMania 13. And I would wrestle Shawn, and we would do a match where I beat him with a submission hold. And when I got up after I beat him, I was going to walk over to him and go give him the finger and say, "F you" to Shawn right on TV. And that was sort of like I know that for Hitman fans, it would be kind of like not the babyface thing to do, but it was also the kind of thing that the Hitman, the original with Jim Neidhart, the bad guy Hitman that I evolved from, would do that to Shawn Michaels after I say, hurt him in the match, and he's lying in the middle of the ring selling his injury, and I walk over and instead of shaking his hand, I give him the finger. I thought that's it's so real, and it's very dramatic, and it's gonna make Shawn right away the babyface. Like that's crossing the line, which is what I was trying to do. I thought that would set me on the path to becoming the heel that I was going to be. And so I laid all that out to Jim Ross and Vince and everybody, and they go, I love it. So that was the idea. And so then I left the building that day, and it's like, I'm winning the belt back at WrestleMania 13. I'm probably going to sign this contract. And I went to the airport, and who do you think's on my flight? Shawn Michaels. He's in Connecticut doing a photo shoot or something. So we're both on the same plane. We haven't seen each other since WrestleMania. And me and Shawn didn't have any big issues with each other. But he goes, he basically was curious to know what I was doing or how it's going. And so I said, well, this is what happened. And I told him, I said, I have this idea for WrestleMania 13. I said, and I wrestle you in a submission, put you in a submission, and I break your arm or something like that. And I give you the finger at the end of it. And I could tell when I laid it all out to Shawn, I said, the whole idea was that I would come back and wrestle Shawn a third time. We would wrestle again, I don't know, like it might be about 6, 8 months, 9 months later, we finally build up to the third match. And it would be the same as the other two, but this time I would lose to Shawn and I would shake his hand. It was going to be an essence. You could either make me a babyface, keep me babyface, or you could turn me heel. Well, that was kind of the plan. But when I talked to Shawn on the airplane about it, I could tell he was sick about it. He hated it. He was like, it was like, and I remember going it'll be really good to do it that way. I said, it's just basically, you win the first one, I win the second one, and you win the third one, and then then you're off, and then I may even team up with you, and we can, we'll become partners and sort of bond over our fighting so hard against each other. And I remember I described it all to Shawn. He hated it. And I remember going, well, Shawn doesn't decide things. It's Vince and Jim Ross, and they loved the idea. Poor Shawn, I feel bad he doesn't like it, but I think it's a great idea. And, I came back, and the whole time I came back, I kept gearing up for WrestleMania 13 with Shawn in a rematch. And then when he had the match where he lost his smile, and I thought that, the match that should have happened never happened. He retired the belt, which I remember rolling my eyes and go, this is all not really. This is just somebody that doesn't want to lose to me. Anyway, so that was what I thought going into WrestleMania 13 was that I was wrestling Shawn. And then when Shawn forfeited the belt, that didn't happen. I was not really looking forward to wrestling Steve Austin, who I loved working with, but I just wrestled him at Survivor Series. And I didn't really have any burning desire to go in and wrestle him kind of cold. I thought the heat and the storyline that was building with Steve Austin would be better to sort of, we would have that when I was champion. Like that would even be better. Like why waste it in another non-title match or situation? I really wanted to work with Steve. In fact, I wanted to be the guy that made Steve. I was pushing for Steve. And that's why I think that's where the real tension started to build between me and Shawn. And the truth about, even when I came back in the summer when I signed my contract with the WWE, came back, I told Shawn, I said, I'm going to be a little stiff on my promos and stuff about you. I'm going to try to be quite real. And I said, is it okay if I, take shots at you for posing for Playgirl magazine and stuff like that? And, Shawn was totally, he goes, go ahead, go for it. Say whatever you want. And I remember I'd go out. I remember the interview where I re-signed my contract and I talked about Steve Austin being the toughest guy in the WWE, and that, you know, I remember I put Steve over, not Shawn. But anyway, I remember I came back to the dressing room after I talked about him posing for Playgirl, and I thought I went pretty hard on Shawn. I knew that was, I could tell by some of the wrestlers in the dressing room was like, whoa, you got heat now. And I remember I going up to Shawn, I said, okay. And he was like, yeah, it was okay. But he looked like he was going to start crying. And that's where I think I might say I probably crossed the line a little bit over the next few months with Shawn. But I would always I would always say to Shawn, I say, how about, is it okay if I say this? And I would ask him about whatever it is I was going to say. And he would go, it's fine. Go ahead and say it. And then when I go out and say it, I come back to the dressing room, he would just look like someone shot him through the heart, you know. And so I feel bad in that sense, because I knew at the time, like, this will get him. You know, this will really break his heart when I say this about him on TV. But at the same time, it was all leading up to the conversation I had with Shawn on the airplane about the whole idea. I told Shawn all this stuff was going to happen, and this is what I was going to do, and this is the way I would play it, and then it would be great. We'd have so much friction. By the time we got to WrestleMania, everyone would think that we really hate each other so bad that it would be money in the bank for everybody. Like, Vince would draw, and it was going great. Everyone, this is going so good. Everyone thinks I really hate Shawn. The only problem was that Shawn thought it was real, and I could see why he did. I mean, I went pretty hard on him, but I still think it would have drawn a lot of money. And the whole match with Steve at WrestleMania 13, I'll just say this much about it, is that I was totally dragging my feet, going, not that I, no disrespect to Steve, but I didn't see any point in wrestling Steve Austin at WrestleMania. I thought it was a throw together match because Shawn wussed out and forfeited the belt. And same thing, you forfeit the belt, and now Sid and Undertaker get the main event match money for WrestleMania 13. Steve Austin and me weren't even in a main event. We were like sixth match on the card. We were barely noticeable on that card. But the truth about WrestleMania 13 was we didn't really have any idea what we were doing. And the fact that they made it a submission match just made it that much harder to have any kind of a, you know, it's good to have pinfalls in a wrestling match because it helps for the suspense. But when it says just submissions, it's pretty boring after a while. And so I remember asking Steve, what submissions do you know? And he goes, I don't know any, or something. I think he had one move that he brought, that tree stump puller or something, like where he puts his back of his leg behind your neck, which is a real shoot hold. And that was the only move, I think, the only wrestling hold that Steve put on me in that whole wrestling match at WrestleMania 13. But I will say, in talking about that match, that with WrestleMania 13, well, I remember we were both kind of like thrown together at the last minute, like 2 or 3 weeks before WrestleMania. So we were sitting there. We hadn't really talked that much or figured out what we were doing. And I remember it's like we walked out to the ring and we sat on the apron and we just started talking. I was like, what are we going to do? And so I said, the way I see this match is it's like a school fight. It's like I'm like the kid that was popular in the school, and all the girls like me, you know, on the football team. I'm the quarterback, and everyone I'm popular with, the teachers and everybody. And now there's a bad kid that comes to school. It's a big troublemaker, and you can see it. I said, it seems to me like the super good guy and the super bad guy are aiming at a sort of head-on collision, and everybody in school knows it, and being the fans know that this is a big fight that's going to happen. I said, I see it like a school fight, and I said we should play it like a school fight where we get face to face in the, you know, I remember we did all that where we went nose to nose, which is always really hard for me because I always almost burst out laughing whenever I. But that whole match, we mapped out that match in about 10 minutes in the morning. We really didn't even put a lot of time and thought into it, but I do know that I think it was the best match I ever had. I think